morning and welcome. My name's Maria and this is the Ninja Chickens channel. It's a creative podcast mostly related to knitting and natural dyeing. Um, we'll have a little bit of homeschooling stuff in here now and then. It is June 4th. I can't believe it's June already. Monday, June 4th. And this is episode 36. This is my green forest I'm in right now. Oh, you can find me on Instagram as ninja.chickens. I always forget this part. Or on Ravelry as Ninja Chickens, and there's a Ravelry group called Ninja Chickens, so come and join. Um, Last time I saw you guys, I was talking about how it had been raining a little bit and it had been nice and we needed some rain. Well, it's been 3 weeks since we chatted, and since then it has rained the whole time. Pretty much the whole month of May, it's rained. These fabulous thunderstorms that make you want to curl up under a blanket and read or knit. Or I really like thunderstorms. So if you don't like them, you wouldn't have liked this past month. But it was really actually a really nice way I felt like to work from winter into spring because it was still cozy, but I felt like I could get out and about a little bit. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you go from this cold winter to a week or two of spring and then it's hot summertime. And it felt like we had a month of cool mornings, cool nights, and thunderstorms in the afternoon. But I live in an area where it gets about an average of 3 inches of rain a month. It's pretty consistent. We get around 36 inches a year of rain. And this past month of May, we got 15 inches of rain. 15 inches of rain, almost half the year's worth of rain in 1 month. And this place has exploded. I read a book once by a woman, Rosita Arvigo, and she's an herbalist and massage therapist and a teacher. She lived in, or she may still live in Brazil. And when she was talking about cultivating the land that she was living on in that area, she talked about how they would, try to clear the spot just for the house and for the gardens. And they'd, clear a foot or so during one day. And then by the next day, there'd be 10 feet that have grown because things grew so fast that she felt like she was always fighting the things that were trying to grow in towards her house. That's what it feels like right now. It is so green out here. It's like I'm living in a rainforest jungle, is what it feels like. So I'm trying to get things to feel like they're under control a little bit so that when I leave for the next month to go to Europe, I won't come back and like find my house completely covered in vines. It's pretty crazy. But yeah, this is my grass right here. There's some yarrow and some clover and some Queen Anne's lace. It's all just growing up like crazy. Yeah, so I hope you guys have had a wonderful last 3 weeks. It's been really busy. The kids have finished up school. We're getting ready for our big trip. I've been trying to get a bunch of eco printing done for a big release that's going to happen. I'll tell you guys about that in just a little bit. But first, I wanted to start with the winners of the Knit Your Bottoms KAL, the knit along. It was a really fun knit along. We had lots of people join in and do little shorts, skirts, some leg warmers, really cute stuff. If you want to check out the feed the group in Ravelry, in the group forum, Ninja Chickens, there is a list with everybody's finished objects and chatter. So I pulled a winner for the chatter thread and for the finished objects thread. The winner for the chatter thread was Le Renard or Camille. It was number 30. And the winner for the finished objects was Sue Weeping Wool. So Sue and Camille, if you guys will contact me, Sue, you will have your first choice since it was a finished object. You will have your first choice of either the Dynamics yarn set. This is 100% fine merino wool, fingering weight, in beautiful purples and gray. And then this is the second choice, which is a project bag from Alpacally Ever After. And this is mine. This one is mine. So yours isn't going to be so messy. I haven't opened it yet. I've just used this one a lot. And it says, this project bag is guarded by an alpaca called Boo. He is neither large nor fierce. He does, however, specialize in mind control. And his preferred form of revenge is the slow kind. So put down the bag and run. Run now and run fast. And don't look back. So you will be getting a bag like this. So Sue, if you will pick which one you'd like, either the yarn or the bag, and then Camille, I will send you the other one. If you guys will both contact me and give me your addresses and choice, that would be great. Thank you all for participating. It was really nice. I have now my beautiful skirt and my first finished object, which was part of the knit along, which is my Maya Mama Looker shorts. I knit these in Blacker yarn, Samite and Tamar yarns, and I think they go really well together. I loved the feel of knitting with them. They were soft but woolly enough to feel like I really had yarn in my hands, if you know what I mean. It didn't just slide right through. I was talking about how, well, first, the only change I did, I knit the pattern as it called for. The only change I did was to make the leg a little bit longer. I did 20 rows on the leg, just because I wanted them to come down a little more. But I've been talking about how I wasn't sure that this cast on was going to work well, and how when I put it on, to try it on, I popped a couple of the stitches. So what I ended up doing was 3 or 4 rows down, I picked up all the stitches all the way around, and then I snipped it and pulled those, the cast on out. And then I just did a couple rows of ribbing. So I was going upwards now, and I cast off with the, I think it's Jenny's surprisingly stretchy cast off. It is where you will knit one, knit a second, and then knit through the back loop, those two together. And then you continue knitting one and then knitting the two through the back loop. So it makes extra yarn so that it's super stretchy. And that worked perfectly. So now I have a nice stretchy waist. And you really can't tell, I don't think. I was worried that it was going to be really obvious that it was a little off because of how I'm then purling back in the other, or knitting back in the other direction. But you really can't tell. If I had done that for 20 rows, it would have been obvious where the switch was, but for just a couple rows, it wasn't. So yeah, I really like those. I'm excited to wear those next winter. It'll be nice to have, I think, you know, that lower part of your back where your shirt might rise up or the pants might go down, that part gets really cold for me. So I think that'll be nice to have these to keep it warm. My other second finished object, which I think I just told you about, I hadn't even started these yet, are my Kuopio socks. And these are first design, I believe, by Hannalisa Haferkamp. And I made these in mole view, but I love it. I love this geometric design. It was really a lot of fun to knit. I thought it was a very creative design and how it works. And what you do, I wasn't expecting to form such a pretty round edge. Like right here where it goes rounded and then it comes back and rounds again. I really like that. I like how it looks. I never really thought I was much into math, but I like geometry. I like things to be geometrically even, if that makes sense. So this was a really fun pattern. I think she did a fabulous job for her first pattern. I really liked the heel. This is actually really similar to what I was wanting to use for my sock pattern that I've been working on. It feels, it's a slip stitch type heel, but it feels nice and cushiony, and that it will be a little more sturdy. The only difference that I did was, instead of casting on the number that it called for in the pattern, I casted on 12 stitches on each needle and then went from there to 56 stitches, because I know that I have, with the way my toes are shaped, I just have a more rounded toe. So I cast it on for a more rounded toe, and that's the only difference. I did knit a large, so this is where swatching comes in handy. Usually I swatch for socks by starting to knit the sock, because by the time I get up the toe a little bit, I can tell whether or not it's the right gauge, and if it's not, I wouldn't have knit. I would have been doing the same amount of knitting to knit a small, a small swatch in the round. And if it's the right gauge, I can keep going, and if it's not, then I rip it out like I would have ripped out the swatch anyway. So this yarn, let's see. So here it is. Oh, I've got it right here. It's her Welsh Mule, which is Blueface Leicester and Welsh Hill breed, not Masham. So this yarn is, it says 4-ply fingering and 320 yards in 100 grams. That seemed like a lot less in 100 grams than the yarn that was called for. So I was assuming I would probably need to go down in either needle size or really work with my gauge, because I thought I was going to have too few stitches in 4 inches. When I swatched, the toe was coming out very small, and when I had enough of the toe to measure what the gauge was, it was completely opposite. I actually had way too many stitches in that in 4 inches. So instead of knitting a small, I ended up knitting a large on a size US 1, which is a 2.25 millimeter. So that's where swatching really makes a big difference. Like, I had assumed that this would be a thicker yarn because there was less yards per 100 grams, but it's just heavier. So if that makes any sense, it stretches out when you knit it to a fingering weight yarn, but the weight of the yarn, it's a denser yarn, and so you have less yards per gram. I think that's making sense. So anyway, I swatched, and now I have a size large. And I love it. Like I said, I thought the pattern was fabulous. And those are the Quopio socks. So another thing I wanted to chat about is when I decided I was going to try to use no nylon, no plastic yarns for my socks. I wanted to find yarns that would be good sturdy sock yarns that didn't require non-natural materials. And so I was looking for things that would create a sturdier yarn. And what I had read was longer stapled yarns and thicker micron yarns, because they're simply bigger diameter fiber. And so they're not going to break as easily. So that was one thing. So a fine merino is not going to hold up as well as a BFL or a Romney that has a larger diameter to their yarn. Another thing was the amount of twist in the yarn. The more twisted it is, the tighter it's held in place, right? So a single ply that has a loose twist is going to break a lot more easily than a tighter twisted yarn. And then the other thing was ply. The more plies, the sturdier the yarn is held together. So again, a single ply is not going to hold up as well as a 4-ply or a 5-ply. So what I went looking for when I was over in Edinburgh was 4-ply yarns with stronger stapled, but still soft fiber. One thing that I didn't take into account, and you guys over in the UK and Europe will have to let me know what you've seen, is the word 4-ply. So in the States, well, traditionally from what I've read, the ply talked about, it was kind of synonymous with the weight of the yarn. So lace weight was 1 ply, fingering weight was 2 or 3 ply. Like, you knew the size of the yarn by the number of the plies. Something that was 12 plies was going to be a much bigger yarn. Well, now there are things like Lopi yarns, that's a single ply, but a very large, like Aran, bulky weight yarn. Or, 4-ply lace weight yarns that are super, super fine. In the States, you can still, so in the States, you know the weight of the yarn by the wording. So lace, fingering, sport, DK, that tells you about the size of it. And then there's the plies, and you might have a DK yarn that's 12 plies or 2 plies. They're separate. What I found out after getting a bunch of my sock yarns from Edinburgh Yarn Festival is that 4 plies still means fingering weight, but it does not mean it has 4 plies. So when I was looking on all the labels for, okay, I want a fingering weight yarn that has the right kind of fiber in it, that is also 4 plies. So I would look and see something that said fingering/4 ply and thought, oh, yay, it's got 4 plies to it. So it'll be a better sock yarn. But unfortunately, 4 plies simply means fingering weight, but it doesn't mean it has 4 plies. So for example, this yarn that I got from Mole View actually only has 2 plies in it. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, the plies are the number of threads that are twisted to make up each yarn. So let me show you. So here's the yarn. Let's see if I can get that out of sunlight. There we go. Here's the yarn. If I am to untwist it or unply it, this one will give me 2 strands of yarn. Try and get my finger. So this is what I get out of it. Just 2. So, I mean, it's not a problem for me. It's still a fabulous yarn for socks. I really like it. But it's something to keep in mind, especially for those of us in the States. If we're looking specifically for a sock yarn according to its number of plies, then you may need to ask if you're getting something from overseas, is it actually 4 plies or is it just called 4 ply because it's fingering weight? Am I making sense? So yeah, I went through all the yarn that I got that had said 4 ply and fingering weight that I got from Edinburgh Yarn Festival. And all of it was actually 2 plies, but it was called 4 ply because it's a fingering weight yarn. So I'm not disappointed. I still love the yarns, but I will keep my eyes open next time for that because it can make a difference if you're looking specifically for a sock yarn that has more plies to it. So something to know. The one work in progress that I have right now is Kaya's sweater, and I'm making good progress on this. Here it is. Let's see. There we go. Get that in the shade. This is the Warm You Up sweater. And I'll put all the details. I didn't write who it was by. I'll put all the details down below. And I'm doing it in Quince & Company's Chickadee. That's what she chose. She wanted 3 big stripes of pastel. So I've done the main body, and I'm going to pick up for the arms and do the same yellow and pink down the sides. And then you pick back up here and make a turtleneck, a ribbed turtleneck. And I decided to, instead of doing like the pattern called for and doing a bit of a cast off around the edges and then picking up more stitches, I left all these stitches live, and I'm just going to decrease as it's called for the rib, and that way I don't have to pick up stitches. Because I think it's kind of a pain in the butt to once you've casted something off to pick it up the right way so that you don't have a hole. And so I thought, well, why not just leave the stitches live? So that I was hoping to have it finished before we leave for France, but I don't think I'm going to have enough yarn for the yellow in the arms. So I may have to put it on hold. I probably won't bring it with me since it's a bigger project, and she won't be wearing it over there anyway. And that's it. And I have to figure out some projects that I'm going to bring with me other than just, a pair of socks. Leaf wants a pair of socks in this crazy rainbow yarn that he'd actually gotten for me for Mother's Day a few years ago. And I have a lot of it. It's a big skein of yarn, so I thought I'd make him like knee socks or thigh highs or something because he would wear those. He'd love it. So I might bring those, but I don't know what else. Let's see. So that is all my knitting, but I have a lot of things to tell you about related to knitting. The first is something that you may have seen coming up through other podcasts or on Instagram that's called the Not Rhinebeck. Not Everyone Goes to Rhinebeck virtual festival. So a lot of people throughout the world, but especially in the States, get really excited for the New York Fiber Festival. And it's called the Rhinebeck Festival because it's in the town of Rhinebeck. It has become a really big thing. People come from all over the world to participate. And sometimes, like some of you did with the Edinburgh Yarn Festival, people feel sad that they can't participate on all of that buildup. There's, what's your Rhinebeck sweater going to be? And where are you staying? And just all this buildup to this crazy, amazing festival that people go to, and a lot of people can't. So myself and a bunch of other makers, I think we've got maybe 30 other stores at this point, there may be more, have created the Not Everyone Goes to Rhinebeck virtual festival. So for that weekend, when Rhinebeck is going to be happening, which is October 19th through 21st, there are going to be a lot of people who aren't at Rhinebeck and have knitting and crafty related stores having some kind of sale or promotion or something, so that people who don't get a chance to go can also feel like they're joining in on the fun. So we're going to have a not going to Rhinebeck knit along. I mean, we all wish we could go, but if you can't, it's fun to participate in some of the build up. So we'll have a sweater knit along that's going to happen from July 1st to November 1st. So you can find some of that information by following, and I'll put all these links, Not Rhinebeck 2018, the Not Rhinebeck Sweater Cal. And we're going to have, during that weekend, there's, let's see, indie yarn dyers, bag makers, pattern designers, notions and accessories. There'll be shop updates, special releases, new products and collaborations. We may even have like a virtual podcaster lounge. So people who can't go can have fun that weekend too. I'm definitely going to have some eco-printed sock blanks, and I'm hoping to do some eco-printed silks and maybe even some clothing. And I will probably put my patterns on sale that weekend too. So there is going to be the Tiny Human Knits podcast. In her Ravelry group, we'll have all the details about the knit along, and I'll have those links below and in the show notes. And Anne Tudor, who is another vendor who's going to be part of the weekend, and I'll have the link down here, is going to have all the details about it on her website. So there's lots of places to look it up. So if you're interested, join in. It'd be a lot of fun. I don't know what sweater I'm going to knit yet. All of my mind is going towards this trip that we're going to be taking. So I haven't really thought about anything past it. But I'm definitely going to participate in the sweater knit along. So let's see, what else? I have a few really neat acquisitions that I want to talk to you guys about. 3 beautiful magazines. The first one is Making Stories, Breeze. And this magazine is by the same Hannah-Lisa Haferkamp, who designed the Quopio socks, and her partner, business partner, Verena Kors. And they put out Woods and the sock magazine, the E magazine for socks. And I've shown you all of them because I think they're amazing. But this is their newest one, and it's called Breeze. And they specialize in European yarns and modern minimalistic designs. And they're very classy. I really like the designs. They also have, with each design, kind of an interview with the designer as well as the yarn, the person who provided the yarn, and then tips and tricks for knitting. So I just wanted to show you a couple of the designs that I really liked. This is the Peterak, I believe. A real simple tank with a pretty lace down the side. And there is, let's see, Solano, which they do as a tank or a long sleeve sweater. And the Coramule, which is another like 3/4 length sweater with a really pretty lacy design in the raglan stitch. So I think it's fabulous. I would highly recommend it. I love the photography, and they have a fun article that talks about doing the photography in the middle of winter to prepare for a spring and summer catalog or magazine. But I also have to say that I love that they're celebrating women of all shapes and sizes by choosing models that aren't the stereotypical model size. And I know that there can be, bashing kind of in either way, that sometimes people who just naturally have that model figure feel like they have to, defend themselves because that's the way they were made. But what I'm saying is, women come in all shapes and sizes, and traditionally all we see is the stereotypical, there's a spider, that standard look for the modeling industry. And that's something that, 90% of us can't achieve, but we've been told since childhood that that's what beauty is. And so I know that myself and many of you fight with that idea of, well, I should be this skinny or have this size breast or have this size hips. And we don't. And, you know, after 44 years, I'm finally starting to get comfortable in my own skin and know that I'm going to be small chested and have big hips and, you know, might have that belly that looks like I'm constantly pregnant, because that's just the way I was made. And unless I want to do 2 hours of CrossFit every day and starve myself, I'm not going to look any different. And so I really, you know, commend them and respect that they are using a woman who is, you know, still absolutely gorgeous. She's a beautiful, beautiful woman, but she is not your skinny model size. And everything still looks beautiful on her. You know, I mean, I love it. So thank you very much, ladies, for doing that. I appreciate more and more seeing magazines that have women with all shapes and sizes. So that is Breeze Making Stories, my first magazine acquisition. My next one is called By Hand Making Communities, and I've showed you one of these before. I was knitting a Jen Steingass sweater out of it. This one I really wanted because it's specifically about the Blue Ridge Mountains, which is where I live. I know I say Appalachian Mountains sometimes, but basically the Appalachian Mountains run from Georgia all the way up to Maine. If you've ever heard of the Appalachian Trail, that's what you're hiking through when you're hiking the Appalachian Mountains. The Blue Ridge Mountains are a section of the Appalachian Mountains, which are generally kind of North Georgia to Virginia. So this is all about the Blue Ridge Mountains. And it focuses on makers in that community, designers, yarn makers, and other kinds of crafters. There was also woodworker, sewing stuff. So let's see. Knitting patterns, they highlighted soap making, a yarn shop, locally produced stuff in the Blue Ridge Mountains. So I really loved it. This is Black Mountain Yarn Shop, Donna and Dawn, who it's one of my favorite yarn shops, if nothing else but because they're the sweetest people. But they also, in addition to that, have an amazing selection of yarns. A lot of indie dyed local yarns that you just can't get elsewhere. It's not a yarn box type of shop. And they also have a lot of really fun activities. They bring in some really neat people and have great classes. So it's a lot of fun to go to. Let's see. Here's another beautiful pattern. This one is called Seven Sisters. And it's a sweater with a really gorgeous design on top. They also did a highlight on Appalachian knits. Two lovely friends, Christina Danai and Jennifer Sadler. And so they have a sweet article on them. And then I think there was another pattern. Oh yeah, they have a sewing pattern for making a tote pack or a project bag, and I absolutely love this. It's made with a waxed cotton, so it's nice and sturdy and also somewhat water resistant. So anyway, that is By Hand for the Blue Ridge Mountains. And then the last thing that I got is something that I've been looking forward to for a year. It's called Our Maker Life, Make Volume 2. Last year they came out with Make Volume 1, and it was a really beautiful coffee table book with fabulous pictures and information about makers in the yarn community, knitters, crocheters, designers. And they asked me if I would participate in Volume 2 last year. And I was, okay, I'll tell you the truth. I got an email that said, you know, would you be interested in contributing? And this is what we need. And I said, I called my husband over. I was like, read this. Is this spam? Because I think somebody's spamming me. Because I didn't. It was a simple email, just like a basic introductory email. And I thought, someone's trying to get me here. I don't believe them. So I sat with it for a little while and didn't respond. Then I was like, okay, I'm going to respond and see if they respond back. And maybe it's not spam. And luckily it wasn't. And luckily I responded back. So this whole, I'm going to just flip through so you can see. There are, aside from the beautiful pictures, 3 big sections. There's the story section, which is stories of people's creative beginnings. What changed in their lives? How did they find their inspiration? Along with beautiful pictures. And then there is the visual lifestyle section, which is a small blurb about that person and why handmade is important and how they found their inspiration. And then a lot of pictures of what they do. And that's the section that I'm in. And then there's the pattern section. And there's, I think, 6 knitting patterns and 7 or 8 crochet patterns. There's a lot of patterns in this book. And it's kind of cool that it's for knitting and crocheting, because you often find one or the other. So this one is Our Maker Life. And again, I would highly recommend it. I think it's fabulous. There's a beautiful brioche cowl. There's a gorgeous cardigan, long coat cardigan. Some handbags. Yeah, it's really sweet. So thank you, ladies, for asking me to be a part. I'm really honored. The other thing I wanted to tell you about is, okay, so you all know that I have been trying to get plastic out of my yarn and do more natural yarns. And that was just kind of like, oh, why do I need it? I can find nice yarns that are pure wool or cotton or natural materials and not do plastic. And then I started thinking a little bit just about how much plastic I have around. It was just kind of a thought in my head, right? I wasn't doing much about it. Then I ended up doing a swap with someone who asked me if I was interested in trying out milk yarn, because she had a large quantity of it, like a sweater quantity of it, and decided she wasn't going to use it. And I thought, yeah, actually, I'd love to try out milk yarn. I'd seen it at the Maryland Sheep and Wool last year and thought, oh, that's interesting, but never really looked up much about it. So I got this 100% milk protein fiber. And this one is from Bella Trista. And it feels almost like silk. It's really soft. It has a nice drape to it. This one, I don't know how many plies there are. It looks like a lot. Like, it's a beautiful yarn. I think it'd make a really nice cardigan. It reminds me more of alpaca in the way it hangs, so it might be a little heavy. It also reminded me a little of linen. So I was looking it up to see, would this be something good to use for summer knitting, something more lightweight. So I started looking into, well, what is it? Like, how do they produce milk yarn? How do you get that from a fluid? So I'm going to read a little bit to you about the history, and this ties into plastic stuff. Milk fiber, or casein fiber, has been around since the 1930s. It originated in Italy, and it was made popular during the wars when all the wool was going to the military. And so it became a more popular fiber. But then when the wars were over and the more new synthetic textiles were coming out, milk fiber kind of dropped in popularity. The pros, they say it's color fast and light fast, which I'm not sure what they mean by that, because color fastness and light fastness has to do more with the dye you're using, right? I mean, like, if they were to take milk fiber and put turmeric on it, it's probably still going to be, it's probably still going to fade over time. So I know it's very soft, it's machine washable, it's very strong, it's less expensive than silk or merino. And people claim that it has antibacterial properties because of a high pH, and then it's good for the skin because it's a protein fiber. I don't know. The cons are it has no memory, so it will kind of just stretch and stay there. It's not going to bounce back. And it can be a little slippery to knit with. So then I still was like, okay, how do you make it? And what they say is, and I'll read this, the process of manufacturing milk fiber is similar to the lyocell process for producing viscose rayon from plant pulp. The fiber is made from bovine dairy milk, often, and this is kind of cool, from throwaway milk, milk that's curdled, milk that's gone bad, that nobody drank, stuff from schools that has to get thrown away, which is nice. So they're, making use of it. But it takes 12 gallons of milk to make a pound of fiber. The casein is extracted from the dehydrated milk solids, and then it's dissolved in an alkali solution, extruded through a very fine spinneret into a bath that neutralizes the alkali solution, and then blended with acrylonitrile. So that's acrylic. So there is a small amount of plastic that's been being used to make it sturdy, to bond it together and hold it together. So though it's considered a green process, under the OEKO Tex Standard 100 for international textiles, it's considered a green process. It is still using acrylic. So when I looked that up, it's not a lot, but it is some. I mean, they can still consider it 100% casein or protein fiber because it's a small amount. But I did find a company called Q Milk that was started by a woman who was trying to make fiber for, I believe, her father, because he was having reactions to fibers. And she started using waste milk and bonding it with what a non plastic. And I asked her what, she just said it's natural materials, but it's a completely natural process and it's 100% biodegradable and all that stuff, which is really cool. All this to say, it got me really thinking about the plastic that I use. I live in this crazy alternative house, right? And everybody thinks I live this real natural lifestyle. But when I started looking around my house at the amount of plastic, I was, I'm going to get plastic out of my yarn. I'm not going to have plastic in my knitting. And then I open my fridge and I see all the plastic bags holding the produce and the plastic holding the carrots and the plastic that's the meat's wrapped in and the plastic bottle that has the milk or whatever. So much plastic. And then I looked at the toys around the house, and then I looked at all of the electronics. And granted, okay, it's the same thing, the same kind of thing that I was talking about with superwash. We made tremendous advances in our society because of plastic. Technology, the medical field, the things that we can do now because we have plastic are amazing. But I don't have to use those in many, many ways. I don't have to use plastic when I buy bulk groceries. I don't have to use plastic when I get spinach and put it in a big plastic container. That was the biggest place that I saw it, was in the groceries. So then I got this in the mail. This month's National Geographic for June is specifically about plastic, and it's called Planet or Plastic. And it is article after article about how plastic is affecting our environment. And this is a girl that's Leaf's age, whose job during the day is to help sort out plastic for recycling. Not go to school, but to go through dumps of plastic. And this is people collecting plastic on their shores and sorting it out into colors. And it just made me sick. The amount of plastic that I use personally that I don't have to. Like, I have the choice not to. It's just become easy because we've become a society of throwaway stuff. And yes, I can recycle a lot of the plastic that I use, but over time, that plastic becomes not recyclable. So what I mean is, it can only be recycled so many times before it just gets flimsy and falls apart. And all those little tiny microparticles of plastic are just floating around in our ocean. And so another example, every night I scoop the litter box and I put the cat poop in a plastic bag that I've used, got from the grocery store or, got when I bought something from the mall, and then I throw it away. That plastic is not going to biodegrade for hundreds of years if it's down underneath a bunch of trash in a dump and isn't exposed to light or moisture or whatever. So I decided that I'm going to try for this next year to go plastic free. And if it works, then I'm going to keep it going. And I'm going to invite you guys to join in whatever way you feel you want to. If you want to cut down on your plastic, if it's just something as simple as I'm not going to knit with plastic yarn that has plastic, or I'm going to commit to taking my own cloth bags to the grocery store, whatever, however deep you want to go. If you want to join me, I will have a year-long thread open in the Ravelry group, in the Ninja Chickens Ravelry group, that'll just say plastic free for a year. And in there, I would like to encourage us all to share our resources, talk about how we are going to try to go plastic free, what things we found that have been helpful, whatever it is. I'd love to hear about it. So my first thought was, how am I going to do this with the groceries? So I have a bunch of cloth bags, you know, similar to this kind of a bag, that are perfect, just mesh or muslin bags that I can put my kale in. I can put the produce in that usually goes into a small plastic bag. I got that. Then for meats and bulk, I brought in a bunch of Tupperwares that I already have. I'm not getting any more, but I brought the ones that I have. I had them weigh them when I got there, and they wrote the weight on there. We're totally fine with it. And I went up and I said, I'd like 2 pounds of chicken breast. Can I have it in this, please? He said, sure, no problem. Put it in there, closed it up. I was good to go. So I just put that straight into the fridge, and I can reuse that instead of putting it in a big plastic bag. With the bulk, it's the same thing. I wanted to get some rice, so I brought a container that I could bring it in. You can bring your mason jars, and I mean, it makes it a little more effort, but in the long run, it's so many thousands of pounds of plastic that I'm saving just for my own personal use. One thing that I thought, okay, well, so this is the type of deodorant that I like to use, but it's in a big plastic container. I went over to the deodorant section and found out, look, they make it in a glass jar too. The top is plastic, but the jar is reusable, so I can actually make my own, because I used to make my own paste and just thought, oh, well, this is easier. So just for ease, I started using this. So, I mean, I'm not going to be, what is the word? An exclusionist about this. I can't say, no, I'm never going to have plastic again, because this is the world I live in, right? And there are going to be times where there's a little bit of plastic. So what I'm going to try and do then is get stuff that's either recyclable or by a company that is as green as possible, and try my best to be creative about the solutions for not using plastic. And we'll see where it goes. I think it would be really cool to not bring anything more into the house that has plastic on it. You know, if I need a new cable for my computer, it's going to have some plastic. They just don't make non-plastic cables. But where I can make a difference, I want to try to. So again, if anyone feels any twinge of interest in this, and you're like, oh, that sounds interesting, I'd like to try a little something, I would invite you to join me. There is a website, I'll put it right here. I believe it's Plastic Free July. Let me see if I can find it. plasticfreejuly.org. And every year they do something, it's based in Australia, to get people to go plastic free for 1 month. And they have all the resources of things that you can do for snack bags, or, not using a straw when you go out for a drink, stuff like that. And that's a great website to go to for resources. And you can sign up to just go for July. If you want to just try it for a month, that'd be awesome. And then if it works well, you can continue for longer. So, yeah, that's my big rant for these last 3 weeks. This is something I feel like I've become very complacent living in the house that I live in. I recycle. I try and do things green, but I really don't. I feel like, what's become easy, crazy birds, things have become easy in my life to just grab this, grab that, just like it has for everybody's life, to make things quicker, to make things easier. We slack off on our commitments sometimes. And one of my commitments since I was very young was to try and do better for the environment. So there you go. That's what I'm going to do. And I invite you to join me. The last thing I wanted to tell you about is something that Leaf wanted to share with you. And that is something he found at a class that he goes to during the week. And so I'm going to put that in here and let him tell you a little bit about his findings.
Okay, so what have you got to show us today?
This is beaver wood.
Beaver wood.
Beaver chewed wood.
Uh-huh.
I found it at first floor, and you can tell by the chew marks and how it kind of fell over right there.
So that's where the beavers chewed into a tree.
Yeah.
And he chewed it completely off.
Apparently he likes this tree a lot. I've
Yeah.
never seen trees with 3 beaver chews on it right next to each other.
Was this next to an area that had a river or a pond?
Yeah, and there was a lot of like this.
Next to it?
Yeah, next to it.
Can you hold it still for me for a second so I can take a good look?
Oh, it's kind of red here.
It is, look at that. And there's all the little teeth marks.
Yeah, it looks like something else was doing it too, because look. There's a bunch of
some
dents.
little spots here where they've chewed into it. Well, that's very cool, Leaf. Thanks for showing us.
All right. I think that was really sweet. I was so excited when he brought that piece of wood out to the car and he's like, look what I found. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. I mean, maybe you guys live in an area that have a lot of beavers, but I thought it was pretty cool that not only did he find it, but it wasn't just, it was a full piece that was completely detached that he found. So we have that at our house now. They let us keep it. Oh, and last but not least, in case you're wondering, I'm wearing my Amigas top. The design is by Dammy Hunter, and the yarn is also by Dammy Hunter of Magpie Fibers. It was a white yarn, and I mordanted it with soy milk and alum, and then I dyed it with madder root, and I love it. It was a very easy knit, and it's a perfect garment for this type of weather. So there we go. That is my last podcast probably until July when I'll be back from Europe. I'm going to try and do lots of filming and get lots of beautiful pictures for you guys. If I have a chance, I may try and podcast while I'm there, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure how it's going to be, so we'll see. If I don't see you, have a fabulous June, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye. If that mockingbird won't sing, Papa's gonna buy